Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome, all you citizens of the world. It's time for another edition of Live from the Heartland. I'm Michael James. I'm here in Chicago's Blue 49th Ward, and I'm going to bring on a couple of people you all know very well. That would be the co-producers and sometimes hosts, Katy Hogan and Thom Clark. A little bit later, we're going to have Jeff Smith, who's been a longtime activist and now has moved from being a Democrat to being an independent. And before I bring Thom and Katy on here to just do the usual old-fashioned opening up for Live from the Heartland banter, I'm going to throw a few things out there that caught my attention. One is that in Bolivia, there have been blockades and clashes with the police around the country over a couple of weeks now, and at least 200 soldiers are being held hostage by armed supporters of Bolivia's President Evo Morales. Now, that's a former president, and there is some battle going on between Morales and another person from his party about the election. We'll try to fill you in more on that as we know, and if we have anyone down there in Bolivia to give us a report, that will happen, but we're working on it. Closer to home, not related to the election, I've learned that cannabis mega stores in New Buffalo, which is only 70 miles from downtown Chicago, have been recruiting Illinois pot customers with lower prices, a big parking lot, free stuff, and all that. And I think I'll turn it over to Katy and Thom, who've both been in Michigan lately. Do they have any insight or confirmation about the sale of marijuana in Michigan to Illinois residents?
Good supplies that are cheaper. And they honored my Illinois medical dispensary card to boot. So I got all sorts of discounts.
Illinois has a pretty well-crafted marijuana legislation. Not that we've really given over the ownership of stores to people who deserve them. There's a lot of big money interests, but we have taxes, we have all kind of fees connected, and I'm wondering how much this will affect the bottom line of the income from tax on marijuana.
So I stopped in a dispensary while I was in Michigan over the last 2 weekends of the campaign because I heard exactly what you're reporting. And given that I have only been in a dispensary 2 other times, only once in Chicago, I'm not a very experienced pot buyer, but I did purchase some pot. It was incredibly cheap. I got a little tin full of gummies that I got because of the name. I have no idea anything else like usual, but I think that the guy in New Buffalo is onto something because we pay way more than they do for product if one did go to a dispensary here.
I think it's fair to say that we had well-crafted legislation that did not get implemented very well. Most of the social equity licenses are just now opening up when the white boy national network of cannabis growers and owners have really taken over and dominated. There was a in the weeds story this week about how minority transportation contractors, these are people that would move the product from the farm to the store. You need a special license. Virtually none of the social equity minority-owned transportation companies got their licenses in time before, again, the big boy white-owned businesses took over all that part of this. So the Illinois rollout has really been flawed, and Michigan has taken advantage of it, to be honest. And I think there is an issue in Michigan about there being too many stores, and we'll see how that shakes out over time. But for the moment, you get off at exit 1, Harbor Country Road. It used to be called New Buffalo. And there are right there 2, not 1, but 2 dispensaries with 15 stations and very friendly staff who know their product. And Really good prices.
Let me ask you,
camping
if either of you know,
casinos.
who are some of the big owners of cannabis stores in Illinois? I heard that the governor's family was in on buying some. Is that true?
So on your show, do you just repeat rumors and expect your guests will either confirm the rumor from their single point of view or give you some
I
standing?
thought you two might know. I thought you
Jiminy
might know.
Christmas. Jiminy
I do
Christmas.
not know who the players are, but there are plenty of newsletters online if you want to dig into the business of cannabis. Um, our rollout was not smoothly done. Michigan rolled out a lot more quickly, and they have a lot more growers. And
Wasn't it legal in Michigan way before it was legal here?
no, it was about the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
In
way
fact,
earlier.
Michigan came later. It may
No,
have
Ann
learned from.
Arbor, I remember you could smoke a joint walking down the street in Ann Arbor like years ago,
Well, that
way
was Ann
before
Arbor.
we.
I don't think it was. I may be wrong. Again, I'm not an expert on this, particularly out of
Yeah,
state.
I don't know how Michael engineered us to be talking about
Oh,
this.
they
So
had medical
shared.
marijuana earlier than we did, I think. Okay, enough on that. I
Thank
brought it
you.
up and I'm cutting it off. Um, um, let's go to our mayor, and he was going to have a big new property tax hike, which really PO'd off a lot of people. And all of a sudden now he's backed off of that. Thom, you follow what's going on with our mayor? Well, we all do a little bit. Do you have any comments on where he's at in general and how this rollout of property tax raising came back to bite him?
Well, if the property tax increase was a trial balloon, it was deflated pretty quickly by people across the political spectrum in the city council. And I think one of the interesting dynamics that's unfolding even as we speak, the property tax increase will be voted down this week, and alternative fee increases will come into play, along with maybe some furloughs and layoffs, which the mayor said he didn't want to do. But I think what we're also seeing is the emergence of what structurally should have always been the case in Chicago, a strong city council, weak mayor form of governance. And we'll see how it turns out, because there are all sorts of interesting positive and negative forces coming into play on people taking apart this budget and trying to repackage it. But I think it's fair to say the mayor's original budget, which is often the case with any executive, the budget they propose is often worked over a bit on committee. But Chicago City Council has a reputation for being a rubber stamp, and it's not doing that this time.
Yeah, I'm not as aware as Tom is of the details because my attention has been elsewhere. Which is an interesting just sidetrack thing is that it's really great to be able to think of something other than what I've thought of for 4 months. It's eye-opening. But what I think that
Well, for people who don't know, Katie's been, involved with Operation Swing State for a few months now, and just making trip after trip up to Wisconsin and to Michigan around this election. So she's been resting up a little bit, working on a cold, and kind of coming back to life on other issues.
I've developed that cold rather nicely, fully. It's a full-blown cold. One thing, correcting myself from last week when you engineered us on the radio the morning after this disaster. I don't know how you pulled that off, but it was Tom and I and Don Rose, and it was actually a not bad show. When I listened to
was
it
good.
on the radio, yeah, I realized I had misspoken. I was telling figures, statistics out of the Operation Swing State playbook, and I wasn't looking at any notes. So I was correct in saying we had knocked over 250,000 doors. And then I used the figure 10,000, which were shifts of people on doors, not people. And I used the word volunteers, 10,000 volunteers. That's not correct. We had a lot, but I don't know if anybody's got the number.
One thing you did say, Kate, is that you felt that a number of people when you knocked on their door, they kind of were very nice, and they kind of lied through their teeth. That did get some response from some of our listeners, that you were so honest, brutally honest.
That's me, babe. What can I say?
All right, I'm going to go back to Chicago, and talking about the city budget. I saw something about recycling. Oh, you have
Can I
something
just
first?
say, the thing that changed, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, what the mayor wanted was a loan for 300, whatever, $1 million, $1 billion, whatever. That wasn't the figure solely addressing or saying that that was the money that was going to be raised from a income tax. Am I wrong?
So
Because I
you're
thought what
wrong.
the council said no to was the loan.
No,
Go ahead.
I think what you're referring to was an earlier issue over the school budget where the mayor wanted to shift money from the city budget to the school budget and have them take out a loan to do that. And that's
Right.
been rejected for the moment, but with the school board in flux, it's not clear that that issue won't come back. The current proposal that the mayor put forward for the city budget did include a $300 million property tax increase, about
Okay.
4% per household. And that has been shot down by the city council. It will be voted down, and a series of other fees and maneuvers will be used, including possibly drawing down more TIF money that hasn't been encumbered. We will certainly see an increase in the monthly garbage fee, which, by the way, at $9.50 a month, only covers about a fifth of the actual cost of picking up our garbage. So
You've changed your tune, Thomas. I remember when we were doing this show together years ago when they first suggested a garbage fee, you were in high dudgeon. Do you remember?
meaning opposed to it, or
Yes, yes. You were
I'm
very
sure I
opposed.
was, but I'm talking about the current reality where there's a
I
$9.
love it. I love it. Evolution. It's proof of evolution. We need
Well,
it. Anyway.
the fact that it's in place doesn't deal with the equity issues about how much is charged and the usage that various households make of our black bin, blue bin garbage pickup system. But that could take up another whole show.
Yeah.
My general point is that the older people are looking very closely at how we spend our money before they raise more money. And they've definitely decided not to raise the property tax. They're going to look
I
at other
love
ways.
that. I love that too about our current city council. They're brave young things, including our own Maria Hadden, who's exercising leadership in keeping sanity in that body. I think you'd agree with me on that.
Yes.
And then we've got Andre Vasquez. We've got some good people on the serious people who are not going to sell our souls. And I really appreciate that. It's very different from
It's
what
very
we grew
different.
up
And
with.
they're also, like, I remember Helen Schiller, they
Yeah.
know, they're deep down in the budget figures and have a very smart understanding, to the extent they've been able to dig the information out, because sometimes that's tough to get out of City Hall, because I'm not
Right.
even sure fifth floor knows entirely the ramifications of everything they're dealing with right now. I mean, Brandon did inherit a mess.
Let me throw back in. I tried to get in there a little bit earlier with recycling and how it relates to the budget. But in general, I think I saw something that Maria hadn't said around recycling or made a move. I find that when my kids were at home, they didn't recycle a lot. They said, well, the word is in Chicago that most of the stuff doesn't get recycled. I said, well, we still have to practice it. And so you put the stuff in the recycling bin. But what's your take, either of you, on the status of recycling before we go on to school board, et cetera, et cetera?
It's gone from
Um,
better to worse in my book. Um, it is true that a lot of what's recycled through the blue bin ends up being landfilled, which was not the purpose. But the whole recycling industry has been in a mess, in part because China's not been buying our old cardboard. That was one of the major revenue sources that kind of kept the rest of the recycling industry going. And we've discovered in recent months that plastic is just not as recyclable as the oil industry has been selling for years and years and years. So there are major challenges with recycling beyond the way the city has run it, but it is an issue. You know, our household, our kids grew up source separating, and now we mingle everything. And I understand the technicalities behind that, but there probably won't be many budgetary things around recycling, unfortunately, because there are bigger fish to fry.
Yeah,
would
and
be
let me
nice-
just add,
Yeah, please.
Chicago is varied in its recycling process because there are different rules and different garbage pickup practices for single homes or buildings up to 4 is what it used to be for residences from the rest of us who are in multi-residential buildings and pay for our own pickup. And when we pay for our own pickup and we do have a recycling bin that gets picked up from a different garbage can that looks sort of the same, but over the years, I keep asking this question since I've lived here. Has anybody ever followed that truck? Or, you know, how transparent are they? Which, you know, was something we pushed for a while ago. I do think that we wouldn't have to spend a lot of money to do some education. To me, that's free. And the civics teacher in me always wants leadership, whether it's elected or heads of departments in the city who actually know their stuff, to simplify and whiteboard it for all us citizens about what works and what doesn't and what needs help, and thereby inviting our help.
Right on.
Anyway.
Okay, now I'm going to move on to another topic. And there was a lot of hype around the elected school board, and there was a lot of competition and a lot of money that went into it. There were charter school factions, there were public school and Chicago Teachers Union backed candidates. All of us, the three of us here, have been involved with a group here in the 49th Ward called Network 49, and Network 49 endorsed Ebony DeBerry, and Ebony did win against some stiff competition. Would either of you like to talk about the school board? Anything you'd like to throw in about it in the election?
Well, the results of the elected part of the
Okay.
school board, I can't remember the particular numbers, but it was about 50-50 between the alleged charter school faction and the CTU faction, with 2 independents. But they will be offset by the mayor's nominating the remaining part of the board until we have a fully elected school board in a couple more years. I think it remains to be seen how this new group will, first of all, act together or not, and what sort of initiatives they may put forward. They still haven't really resolved their budget crunch. Katie, you were going to say something.
I think they better understand that they are on thin ice, because it will not take the public of Chicago much to start complaining about an additional layer of bureaucracy if it doesn't actually perform and make positive change in our schools, which need it badly. I must say, the process for us in 49 was completely interesting. Based on the urgings of our younger members, we hurried up our endorsement and came up with Ebony DeBerry early in the process. We did have an open setting with 2 other candidates present. We would have had 4, but CPS had already, or Chicago Teachers Union had yanked one of the candidates to, you know, to me, the whole thing reeked of Chicago politics by the end. And because Brandon was acting out in the middle of it, he really put his own candidates, or as was perceived, his own candidates, in a pickle. And whether or not he's owned up to that or is behaving better, we shall see. I think the kids are losing still at the moment.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left, and I'm going to throw it to each of you. Take a minute to think, or a couple of seconds to think about one thing that you've observed or are aware of or care about that you would like to talk to our listeners and viewers about. So I'm going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and Thom, I'm going to pick you first.
Well, I find myself reliving 2016, where I think I'm going to be focused very much on local rather than national or even international affairs, because I'm not sure what effect we will have on those shifting currents outside our particular region, but I know I can have impact here. I want to quickly plug, because I think it's important this time of year, despite what happened with the election, to celebrate. We're having a party next week. We meaning the investigative project on race and equity. We're celebrating our first year of operations. We won all sorts of journalism awards this past year, primarily around our police traffic stop series that we did with WBEZ and the Sun Times. We did a wonderful story about seniors. It wasn't a wonderful story, but an in-depth look at seniors having trouble getting home repair loans because, believe it or not, they're in redlined unofficial communities, and they just can't get the appraisals they need to get a bank to give them a loan to fix the roof in the house they've lived in for 35 years. So the investigative project in race and equity is celebrating this first year of wonderful journalism on November 21st at Monochrome Brewery in Pilsen, and we invite you all to join us for that celebration.
That's great.
Got Kate?
I'm very impressed by that group and how you've just jumped off, Thom. So I hope you do a whole show on that sometime. I find myself also closing in locally. I'm very happy that we have what we have here, which is a practiced, experienced bunch of activists in the 49th Ward of all stripes. We know the nuance that the quote unquote left or progressive wing can consist of. So we're not subject to the kind of stereotypical BS that the media shoves down our throat all the time, just clumping us all together and making us morons. So I'm kind of into saving the planet at this point. So anything that we can do, and I think it would be pretty righteous for a bunch of folks our age, seniors, to descend upon the Capitol in an orderly fashion, having made appointments with our representatives and all of the representatives, and fill the halls with knock on doors and saying, okay, what are you guys doing about this? And, all the other things that are environment killing, which includes making war. Everything's connected when you talk about the earth we stand on. So there's no limit.
Well,
and I would
We're
just
gonna have
encourage folks to look at Third Act, Illinois. We have an active chapter of elders trying to help save the environment for our grandkids. And it's a wonderful group. It's actually part of a national network. And of course, we are all kind of refiguring how we approach these issues with the new regime in place. But we'll
Tell them seniors like to march in warmer weather. So
Yeah.
March or April.
We've come to the end of our time. I do want to talk about two people who passed away. One would be Lou Donaldson, the great sax player. He passed away at 98. And at the end of the show, we'll go over some of his music. And our friend Ella Jenkins, who you can see a lot of times when she visited the Heartland Cafe. If you just type in Ella Jenkins live from the Heartland or go to our YouTube site, there's lots of interviews with her singing. She was wonderful. Our other producer, Lynn Orman, was real close to Ella and was with her almost till the end.